next speaker is, again, one of these operators that we like to talk about so much. Tycho has built companies in 10 countries. One of them was the long-term stock exchange, which incidentally was in the same Y Combinator batch I was in 2017. So we actually go a while back, and now we've anchored their fund, Fifth Quarter Ventures. Tycho.
Here today. I'm going to tell you about how we're building bridges in the part of the world called former Yugoslavia or Western Balkans, or the way I like to refer to it as the Adriatic region. I'm first going to share a personal story, and I'm going to let you know why this isn't just an exception, but why this is a trend that is happening, and why I'm excited to be back home after 25 years. Building the next generation of startups. When I was 9, war broke out in my hometown in Croatia in 1991. For the following 9 years, we moved around a lot, and often, along with a number of other families as well, my family fought for the very existence. When you look at the number of unicorn founders in the US who are immigrants, it's more than half of them. And some of these formational experiences, fighting for literally your life, is what sometimes prepares you for the uncertainty, the high uncertainty of a startup. As Michael said, I built startups in 10 different countries. Was lucky to be one of the founding engineers in a couple of companies that went public. And most recently, I spent 6-7 years building the long-term stock exchange with Eric Ries. When we started building that in 2016, I also started building a network of Serbian expat entrepreneurs around the world, because I noticed that due to the stigma of the 90s and early 2000s, we were completely unnetworked. And then through that network, I started investing in the region and started helping the region and realizing what an opportunity that was. And then COVID happened, and after 20 years of highly educated people actually fleeing that part of the world, we saw an inverse in the trend. And so for the last 4 years, every year, we've been actually seeing more highly educated people, including entrepreneurs, come home to build startups, much more so than they are leaving. So we're talking about a demographic trend, which is very, very interesting. And then the last couple of years in the tumultuous period in Europe has actually further helped repatriate more people. So I'm not an exception, I'm an example, and I'm an example of the type of entrepreneur we want to invest in as Fifth Quarter Ventures. We are an early stage VC fund who invests into deep tech startups run by founders from that part of the world, from the Adriatic region, and startups that are targeting North America for their go-to-market. We are 3 operators. Between the 3 of us, we have helped raise more than $1 billion for our startups, multiple companies that have gone public, multiple unicorns that we either co-founded or advised on. And we have collectively more than 40 years of experience in North America and 15 years of entrepreneurship experience in Western Europe. So that's a bit about us, and why should you as an investor potentially care about this part of the world. So Adriatic region is one of the last remaining corners of Europe where there's been an underallocation of VC capital. And despite that, we have had a number of really, really great success stories. So for example, in Croatia, you may know about a unicorn called Infobip, European version of Twilio, or Rimac Motors, which eventually end up buying Bugatti super sports car. In Serbia, you have an AI microprocessor, AI chip, that's worth several $billion. In neighboring countries, you had successes like UiPath. So we definitely have the deep tech talent. We are just lacking the access to capital and the know-how how to launch in the US. We are riding a wave of demographic trend that I already talked about, where people are returning back home to start startups, and we continue to have really superb schooling, and we continue to rank in some of the technical coding challenges among the best in the world. So I think the opportunity is right now, because you would not actually be the first LPs or the first VCs to be thinking about this region. In recent years, we've had, for example, AMD open up a really large research facility, Databricks as well, Intel, Microsoft, NVIDIA, all designed their chips in the region. We've had a number of Series C or startups reaching Series C level of funding, despite the being from the region and not actually having local VCs that they can rely on. So I represent a new generation of VCs, a generation of VC that has actually brought foreign capital into the region, private capital into the region, not pension funds or anything else like that, but people who are backed by entrepreneurs, backed by operators who understand how to build startups. And we are really tapping into the things that this region is really, really good at, right? So it's a relatively small region. We cannot do everything in the world, but you have to remember that the unaligned movement started in Belgrade. So we have actually built, former Yugoslav engineers have built a bunch of infrastructure in Africa and the Middle East in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s. So we have really great manufacturing background, automotive, even aerospace engineering. The hardcore math talent, if you look at any crypto startup these days, they have a Serbian or Croatian CTO. A bunch of researchers from top universities or top AI startups are actually from the region. So there are 5 key parts that we look at from our investment thesis, really tapping into the talent and the local ecosystem where our future founders, where our future startups can actually grow. The way we work is that we are an operational VC. So we really get into the startup for a couple of quarters before we make an investment. We, so to speak, date before we really engage. We figure out if we can work together. And we figure out at the time of the term sheet if they agree with our investment thesis and if they want our help, so together we can actually go and build next wave of unicorns from this region. And if they do, then we get onto the cap table, we get into the boardroom, and we help prepare them for that next step. We are the first institutional check. We write between $500,000 and $1 million. We have started less than a year ago, writing first checks. We were one of the first allocator 1 GPs that Michael and Felix backed. We have made our first 7 investments in AI, robotics, manufacturing, open source dev tooling, things where, again, our region has taken its disadvantage of having to develop without commercial access to software and having to be innovative. Again, people who have survived the tough 90s and early 2000s, who have figured out how to be resilient, who have figured out how to be resourceful. And the reason why I like to put up this slide is because if you look at the flags, you realize that people are not, they're building global companies from day one, and they're tapping into the best of the local talent. And so we have multiple companies from Croatia who have offices in Serbia, companies from Serbia who are actually building right away from day one in America. And so the title of my presentation is Building Bridges. And so this is one of the ways that we can help repair the damage from the 90s and early 2000s is by allocating VC capital that funds deep tech startups, that creates jobs in the region and interconnects the countries in this war-torn region that can then together use the commonalities they have, which is far more than we are led to believe, to actually build globally scalable companies from day one. We are lucky to be, we're fortunate to be an allocator 1 company. There are a couple of other really key LPs in our network, like Helen's Rock from Vienna and Nexan from LA. As I said, all of our capital is, the vast majority of our capital is foreign capital that is being deployed for the first time in the region. In these 7 first investments, we're happy to have backed 2 Y Combinator startups and a bunch of other startups that have gone on to already raise follow-on funding, along some really great names. We are having our final close in about 2 months. We are 70% towards our goal of $20 million. I hope that I can meet some of the LPs today in the audience and that together we can deploy more capital into this forgotten part of Europe so we can build bridges locally, take the best talent from Europe and help build globally scalable success stories. Thank you.